Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the ADAC SimRacing Expo 2023, day 3, the final day.
Yes. Good morning. Are you doing good?
I'm doing okay, yeah. A few sore heads in the Expo
put it that way.
today.
It's a typical Expo Sunday, right? Faces are long, schedule is long, so let's make the best out of it, I think. Also, our voices sound a little bit more sexy than yesterday, I feel like.
Well, yeah,
Good morning, everybody. Okay. Hallo, schön euch zu sehen, guten Morgen, also in Germany. Hi Dortmund, wie geht's euch? We're pretending there's an audience, they are still asleep as well, right?
Yeah, they very much are asleep. So what have we done in the last couple of days then, Matze? What's been your favorite part so far?
There have been so many favorite parts. Actually, the races, of course, they were exciting and I enjoyed it a lot, but also I stepped into one of the rigs over there. I messed up, pretty intense, but that was a highlight, definitely, for me. And maybe for everyone who saw it. And yeah, also, let's say the panels, well, we had not that much, but I enjoyed them as well. Like from sim racing to real world racing, for example, were intense insights for me. And I'm looking forward for today, because we have another panel there.
Yeah, I had some really good panels this week as well. I spoke to Swelio Almeida on Friday. Yesterday I spoke to Tim Heineman. Spoke to Paul Crawford as well, as Eric Strana and Greg West from iracing the FIA. All about the F4 partnership, so plenty of stuff happened. But what about today? Today, the final day,
yes.
It's all about racing action today.
Absolutely, we put the best races on the final day, especially that all the teams are there. It's great, right?
Yeah, we certainly are. We've got many a team on site racing in the GT500, which of course is historical to the SimRacing Expo.
Exactly.
And we will be crowning another champion, so it should be good.
Always pretty much of a highlight. So we're going to start with the qualifying race now. Then we have a second qualifying race, and at 2 p.m. we'll start the GT Digital 500, whatever. Put it around as you like.
I will also be doing some interviews on stage with some of the drivers. You've got a panel to do today as well.
Yes, how is sim racing today and beyond? We're going to discuss that. I'm looking forward to it, and yeah. Maybe now we could actually start into the first qualifying race.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's head over to Alex and Nico.
There you go.
Morning, Luke. Morning, Mats. And morning, everybody. Morning, Nico. Final day of competition.
That was a hell of it.
With the digital GT500. It's not gone well, Mats, this morning for you, has it? But of course, the ADAC digital GT500, a stalwart of the SimRacing Expo, and has been to multiple different tracks over the past few years. The Nürburgring in 2018, Spa 2019. We made a return when the Expo made a return, funny enough, at the Nürburgring. And where were they racing? The GP circuit. But last year, Monza. This year, the Red Bull Ring. Very, very different circuit to the Temple of Speed. What can the drivers expect over the course of the 2 qualifying races and the GT500 later on today, Nico?
Well, the Red Bull Ring is a really interesting track because when you just look at the track map, it looks like such a simplistic track. But what you also don't realize in the simulator when you're just driving it, you really only realize that when you've been there once in real life, which I've been lucky enough to be, the track is just built on the side of a mountain. After turn 1, it just goes straight uphill. Then you're going over a crest for the Remus curve, turn 2, well, turn 3 if you count the little left-hand kink before that. Then straight down the hill for the entire rest of the lap. And the entire time, it's always possible to do overtakes. You have long straights, you have fast corners, and these corners are all wide enough and have all pretty different lines as well. So you can actually take different approaches to corners, to defend, to attack, just to try and get a bit more momentum or something to set up a pass for the next section. And yeah, makes it a really iconic circuit. It's been in F1 for ages. It's also, I think, now it's the second newest track they've got. Ricardo Tormo is a lot newer. It's 30 years newer. But yeah,
it's quite funny because, of course, it was opened back in July of 1969, then closed down, reopened back in 2004, thanks to the efforts of the late Dietrich Mateschitz. Reopened back in May of 2011. It's hosted the DTM. It's hosted both the Formula One Austrian, and if anyone might remember back in 2020 during COVID-19, the
Styrian Grand Prix,
the Große Preis der Steiermark, if I remember correctly, and they had the Styrian national anthem playing there as well. The DTM raced there between 2001 2003 and has also been on the calendar from 2011 to 2018 and has been back They've even competed at it this year since 2021. World Superbikes, the FIM Endurance World Championship, fastest actual ever recorded lap in a GT3 car was in the 2017 Austrian round of the ADAC GT Masters, set in a Lamborghini Huracan GT3 by Christian Engelhardt of around a 1 minute 28.445. But then you look at the honour roll list, Nico. Household names. Well, some names that were about back in the late 2010s, such as Pure Racing Team. I still remember a certain Maximilian Benneker being part of the one of the winning crews because they picked up a 1-2.
Yep.
Coanda has raced in it, has also won it back in 2019 ahead of Red Bull Racing Esports. But in recent times, we've seen BS Competition, Marla Racing Team, Urano Esports, and last year, well, Redline struck big-time drama with a third of the race to go, where there was a fuel issue, as in tried to hit the fuel button, wasn't responding. Gianni Vecchio pulled out of the pit lane and returned to garage and lost the victory. And it was the last appearance of Maximilian Benneker as a Redline driver before moving over to Mouse Esports. We've seen Moritz Lerner and Yuri Kasdorp. Great to see them here to come and visit at the Sim Racing Expo. But we look at what happened last year. Well, I think Luke rightly put it that it was the Williams Esports Sim Racing Expo last year, because not only did they win the professional trophy, they went on and secured a 1-3 last time out. And looking at the amount of, well, you've seen the amount of information that I've collated over the past, we got a lot of some of the teams that were actually racing in the GT500 last year. The defending champions are Alessandro Bico and Moreno Serica. They were running in the Razor car last year. They're now representing the Williams Esports Chill Blast car, and we do have a returning driver in the sister car, because not only do we have the teams here in person, we also have a person that is a pretty dab hand at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, a certain flying Finn by the name of Sami Matti Trogen, running with Walkenhorst Motorsport in the BMW M4. Great to have him. He's actually a pretty good hand as a sim racing driver, let alone the IRL stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like as you mentioned, we have, how would you say it? In German, we would call it ein hochkalibriges Feld.
A high caliber field, yes.
Very high quality drivers here. Of course, also for the Esports and Falcon Sim Racing Team, for example, we have local celebrities like Michael Rechel, Tim Jaschel, Lukas Müller, and Jonas Rütten. And these guys also already quite popular, quite well known in the German sim racing scene over multiple different simulators. Like Michael Rechel, one of these guys, you put him into any simulator and he just goes fast.
You just plonk him in and off he goes.
It just works.
It's like the Duracell bunny, just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, it just works. Todd Howard.
We have to give a shout out to one particular team, Grid & Go Esports.
Yep.
Stefan Marsch Stiftung, who are one of the people that actually have a stand here, obviously with regards to stem cell research, cancer prevention. I have to say that's really good to have institutions like that trying to do preventative measures, that kind of thing. And it's really good to see that Grid & Go Esports. I have to say big shout out to Danny Juicer for letting me have a look at the livery, and it is absolutely stunning. They're going to be, we've got multiple different manufacturers represented. We've got Mercedes, Porsche, BMW, and we have got
Ferrari.
We have, yeah, you took the word, well, I was going to use the Cavallino Rampante term, and you just went Ferrari.
No one gets special treatment. Everyone is
equal. Says the man who talked about BOP briefly yesterday.
Chance, but
But just a bit of an explanation about the format. So, in respective years previous to this one, the teams have actually done hot lap qualifying off-site previous years. This year, it is warts and all. There is nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. What that means is the drivers have qualified, so we have 2 drivers per team. Each driver will take part in one of the 20-minute qualifying races, so they'll go through a bona fide quali session, have a 20-minute race. the combined results of race 1 and race 2 will set the grid. There is a €15,000 prize pool up for grabs. And I think it's very much the case in points that one of the requirements, Nico, is for the teams to be here at the Sim Racing Expo. And by that reflects the fact that the €15,000 prize pool is to reward the teams in some way, shape or form, as if to say, thank you for putting in the effort to come here to compete. And there we switch from Assetto Corsa Competizione after the last 2 days to a platform you know very, very well, iRacing in some respects.
Yes. I don't have too much driving experience overall on it, but it's always one of these things, you know, we have so many different simulators, so at some point you have to try them all out. And iRacing is certainly a very unique simulator. It's a completely different physics set to everything else.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of these like biggest selling points, obviously, the huge online community, the daily races that you can basically do hourly, and of course these stunning visuals here as we see a wonderful look at turn 1. Fun facts about the Nürburgring. No, wrong track. Red Bull Ring. Topical.
Get it right, Nico. No, don't worry. It's the last day. But, you know, there is going to be a bit of humour with us too at the moment. I have been informed, big thank you to Michael Hamlet from SimGrid just informing me that we are missing a couple of the teams, but they are going through warm-up at this moment in time. Some great corners at this circuit. Especially when you see the rundown from Remus, which is effectively turn 2. You've got that very, very long uphill parabolica from Niki Lauda up to Remus. If anyone might remember a certain Sheep in House moment back in 2016 in DTM.
I mean, that was what triggered it. The real Sheep in House came at Schlossgold then. The next corner down the hill.
Yeah, exactly.
Snooker with racing cars.
But then, you know, you look at the significant elevation changes. Because in some correlation, if anyone might remember the COTA, Circuit of the Americas, it very much mimics the Red Bull Ring, but in a mirror image style fashion, doesn't it? It's an uphill run from the start-finish line into a 90 right here at the Red Bull Ring. It's a 90 left at COTA. But I think we also have to talk about another aspect. There has been a BOP. Now, this is where we can talk about it. And through the official messages that we've had via the Discord on this, that there was there is a BOP, and the thing is, the power has been slightly reduced on all cars, but the only car, if I remember correctly, that does have a additional weight added to it.
That would be the Ferrari, yes.
10 kilos.
Yep.
So, effectively, the Porsche doesn't have a power. Right, okay. This is exactly what happened last year. The Porsche had no
power adjustment,
no power adjustment, no weight adjustment. Mercedes will have 76% fuel, power output at 99.25%. Ferrari, 99.5% power is what they're allowed to use. Weight added to the car, 10 kilos. Same amount of power for the BMW M4. And this, I mean, it really does give the, you know, when you look at the people that have competed in this, if anyone managed to see last year's GT500, it was an absolute cavalcade of colour. You had you had a lot of teams. Of course, people might be saying, why have you only got this amount of cars on the grid? Well, the thing is, look at it from this perspective. You have to give kudos to teams that have competed in this before, but you also have to look at it. This is a very short circuit.
Yeah.
Very short circuit. And there's also minimal room for mistakes. So there is our grid. And again, you can see that they're weaving from side to side. So we've got, it's going to be a 1-2 for the Williams operation. So looking at the drivers, for Grid and Go Esports, Stefan Marsch Stiftung, we've got Sven Haase, Pro Sport Sim Racing Blue, Philip Dirsus, Lukas Prada for Thomas Enger, Pro Sport Sim Racing, the youngest driver again for the second year in succession. Shout out to Sean Terra. Door Esports have Michael Rechel behind the wheel. Lucas Miller will be running with the Falcon Sim Racing team. Porsche pace car in the pits as we get ready for the first of 2 qualifying races here at the Red Bull Ring in Syria in Austria. The drivers now will go racing. The green flag waves, and it's a 3-way spread at the back end of the field. Row 2 is very much the same, bit of an earth between the number 20. That's the Door Esports Mercedes AMG. The number 44 of Falcon Sim Racing runs wide, but at the minute here, Nico, it's a good start for Williams. Sami Matti Trogan running behind Alessandro Bico as they run up to Remus for the first time. A little bit of an opportunity here for the Thomas Enger Sim Racing crew. That's the number 18 with Lukas Prada behind the wheel, side by side with the number 20 of Michael Rechel as they now make their way down towards Schlossgold. And you can just see that there are some really clean battles happening, but the top 3 are starting to stride away in the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. We also saw a tiny little bit of contact between a couple of the Mercedes cars in the background at the further back of the field at turn 1, but it seems that everything has seemingly sorted itself out. Everyone's still relatively close together, and yeah, now we're underway, coming around the tail end of the track now, around Wörth. Little left-right chicane before we go into Rind, the last, second to last corner. Down the hill really, really fast, stupendously difficult to get right, especially with the tarmac runoff at the outside.
Yeah.
One of these corners that, causes a lot of controversy because in F1 they're constantly catching each other there when they're on practice runs and stuff, blocking each other and all that.
Yeah, we've got the Pro Sport Racing duo, cars 7 and 8 running in formation just behind Thomas Enger's Lukas Prada at the moment. So we have got behind the wheel of the respective Pro Sport Sim Racing blue cars and red car, we've got Philip Dirsus, and we've also got Sean Terra as we ride on board briefly with one of the Pro Sport Porsches. A little bit of a battle behind them, 2 Mercedes side by side into Remus, and then over the crest, down the dip. Very, very high-paced circuit as well, but at the minute, gap between first and second position is going to be about 4 tenths. So now they go down the dip. The elevation changes is also something to consider because when you're trying to get traction out of corners here, Nico, you've really got to sort of play your cards right. You can't really sort of go a bit too gung-ho, and especially with the fact that, we've got Williams Razor, Williams Chill Blast leading the way in a 1-2. It's more a case of you've got to cross the T's, dot the I's. If you put a foot wrong here, you are going to get punished. You see, Sami Matti Trogan has just put a left rear wheel on the grass. We actually ride on board with the Finn in the number 3 Williams Esports Chill Blast car. It just goes to show that you make that one wrong mistake, and coming out of Rint, you see the marker boards, like the 150 marker board. Sami Matti Trogan setting the fastest lap of the race on that particular occasion. But we are going to be hitting around 17 laps. Now, for the main feature race, folks, it's 500 kilometres, but it is a timed race. So we may not necessarily hit the 500 kilometres at the end of it, but you can see there's the timing board on the left-hand side of your screen. So Moreno... So this is the correct order at the moment. So we've got Moreno Sorica leading the way. So he's gone into the first race for Williams Esports Chilbla, for Williams Esports Razor. Sami Matti Trogan. Then we've got the 44, that's Lucas Müller, partnered with Jonas Rutten, both known with Door Esports, but of course Falcon Sim Racing team having a good welcome presence here. Lucas Müller was actually fourth with, funny enough, we've got Door Esports, and Michael Rechel was actually Lucas Müller's partner in crime last year in the number 20. The number 21 junior team had a bit of a drama when Team Fordzilla tagged them coming out of Ascari. The 21 was thrown into the barriers, and then Team Fordzilla got a possible podium taken away through to a 5-second stop and hold in the pit lane. But we got Rechel, Prada, Dirsus, Brill, Sven Haase, Sven Hettich, Maximilian Podol and Glenn Key, who's running in the Racing Lab Esports. That's the Norwegian crew. So we're going to be hitting 17 laps at the end of the race of each of the 2 qualifying races. But it's quite interesting in some respects, Nico, that rather than having that offline qualifying, you now have that, look, let's put it true race format. Qualify race 1, qualify race 2, and then you go for the big one. And then that's when the realization is, okay, we're competing for money. We're competing for a share of a €15,000 prize pool.
And they absolutely have to work for it as well. I think it's quite nice to have qualifying races for like the big event here. And I mean, it's a popular current format because, you know, F1 has been trying it. Then it's been a thing in like smaller karting championships for a while already. So it's a quite nice touch to have that here as well. And I think especially with such a fast-paced circuit like the Red Bull Ring, it just works excellent.
Yeah, I think the good thing is that, as I said earlier, with these teams, you know, track limits are going to be key, especially coming out of Rindt and Red Bull Mobile, which are the last 2 corners on this 2.683 mile, 4.318 kilometre circuit. But we continue onwards. And there is the number 18 of Lukas Prada, still rounding out 5th position at the moment behind Michael Rechel for Door Esports. But Lucas Müller trying. I mean, the thing is that the Ferraris, even with the 10 kilos of ballast here, Nico, it doesn't seem to hinder them as much as I thought they would do, because, of course, there was a lot of BOP trialling in the lead up to the GT500. And, of course, I'm glad that we're able to actually talk about it without making a wisecrack. The thing is, of course, the other benefit that the Ferrari has is the fact that, as you said, it's a twin turbo, it's a V6. So, of course, the centre of gravity, the power to weight ratio is going to be a lot more in the Ferrari's favour. And even though the Williams teams have gone with a car that has a 10 kilo BOP adjustment, it isn't hindering them that much, but it could catch them out if we go into the GT500 and someone manages to get the jump on them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we also have this comparison here. We have 2 cars with turbos, which are the BMW M4 and the Ferrari 296. And then the other cars, the Porsche 992 and the Mercedes AMG, obviously some of the very iconic, still naturally aspirated cars nowadays.
Yes.
And for the people at home wondering, what's the difference actually between the two? Turbo, of course, can be a lot more fuel efficient if you run it properly and, you know, if you run the right mixture and all that. And naturally aspirated just has a lot more direct throttle response. So obviously these cars are engineered to such a high level now that, you know, it's not like turbo lag like in the 80s where the F1 cars were waiting, and there comes the turbo. And, you know, then it's basically, you know, your serial is waiting for you back at the desk. And yeah. But these cars obviously still have a little bit of a turbo lag there, because that's just something that you can't really get rid of. It's just in the nature of the design.
I think, you know, when you look at about it, the BMW M4, it's a 3 litre, the M Power turbo system, which basically has a smaller capacity turbocharger to try and reduce the presence of turbo lag through the lower band of the rev range, and then the bigger turbo comes in, and turbochargers normally will spin at around 100,000 plus RPM a minute. But still, we have been seeing, Victor Brilla's been closed in on a little bit, but we have seen the likes of Sven Haas, Sven Hedich. You know, that the good thing is, it's people might say, well, this is a bit processional. When you think about it, this is about how you get things going forward. Moreno Sarica for Williams Esports Racer just sets a new fastest lap, 1 minute 28.773. Sami Matti Trogan staying within half a second. And you know what? I think at the end of it all, there's, for those wondering, what is the split? Well, we've had an adjustment because obviously with the amount of teams that are competing, it's probably going to be north of €2,500 for the eventual ADAC Digital GT500 winners of the event. But of course, there are points through every single stage. So, you've got to really maximise your opportunity, haven't you, Nico?
First of all that, and second of all, it's all about consistency as well, because of course if you're in front at the finish line, that's great, but much like every other endurance race, you're not really going to be too happy. Like, it's always fantastic when you have a recovery drive and you're coming from like 50th place or something from at Spa, for example, in the 24 hours.
Yes.
You come from so far down because you had a mistake or botched qualifying or anything, and then finish in first. It's a fantastic story, but obviously with all these stage points, it can mess you up in the championship sense, and of course for this as well, it can mess you up quite harshly. So it's very important that you just never make a mistake, always stay on top, and yeah, stay consistent as possible. And especially here, with all this runoff.
Yeah. Well, he went wide through Rindt and then through Red Bull. He was all four wheels off the track. Now, of course, very different. Oh, dearie me, I saw someone go off in the background. That was Lucas Prada. He held it. Code Brown, anyone? Yes, Lucas will be definitely thinking, I'm so glad I caught that one. Now, for those wondering what the point scoring is, it basically is 50 for a win, 49 for second, and so on and so forth. So it goes down in increments of 1 point between positions. So believe you me, this will be a very, very closely fought GT500 this year, live and direct from the Dortmund Messe in the Ruhrgebiet. Very, very good that we're here, and of course this event will be here for at least the next 4 years in addition to this one, which is really, really good. It gives a good amount of consistency. You can see that Sami Matti Trogen is really starting to push. He's got to within about 0.3 of a second of Moreno Sarica and was slightly quicker on the previous lap. It was a 1 minute 28.892 for Sami Matti Trogen, and then a 1 minute 28.965 as the number 7 of Victor Brill has dropped to what is now 10th position. That's Moreno Sarica, and there is Victor Brill in the number 7 Pro Sport Porsche. Pro Sport have a not only their own sim racing team, but they do have activities within real life racing, including ADAC GT4 Germany. Actually, one of their drivers that's currently on the grid at the moment, Rafael Renhofer, I know personally quite well. Used to commentate on him in junior and senior Rotax, and I've known him and his dad Martin for quite a long time. But again, it's nice to see that you're seeing a lot of activation by these real life teams that come into sim racing, and it's a great way of scouting young raw talents, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. With Pro Sport, it's also a very fresh sim racing program, but they've been in motorsports for such a long time. If I recall correctly, actually, when I was here in person, they were running an ADAC GT Masters with one of those wonderful Aston Martin Vantage V8 GT3 cars with Daniel Keilwitz at the wheel. And
yes.
he is by far one of the best GT3 drivers in Europe, I think. And he's just always everywhere, just driving all different cars. Obviously, most iconic with him being in the Roller Corvette with Callaway competition.
Oh, yes.
And speaking of Red Bull Ring and Callaway Corvette, funnily enough, we mentioned the lap record here in 2017. And that very year, a very good friend of mine, who actually taught me how to drive when I started out in motorsport, Maximilian Hackländer, actually got second place here in the RWT Racing Corvette.
Right.
Der Dampfhammer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm still an avid fan of the GT Master Series. It's a fantastic championship. And you've seen the likes of Mikko Bortolotti, who now races in DTM. René Rast has been in there. Maxi Goetz has been a stable name in that. Of course, also now a man that can call himself a DTM champion. You see a lot of great talent coming through that series, and this is why GT3 is very much ingrained in the German sort of racing scene, both in sim racing but in real life. That's why you see a lot of drivers really enjoy the challenge of a GT3 car. But now we see that Sami Matti Trogen on lap 10 out of 17 is getting closer and closer once again to Moreno Sarica. So it is a battle. They have dropped the number 44 of Lukas Müller for the Falcon Sim Racing team in the wonderfully colourful Mercedes-AMG GT3, the 2020 edition, as now our two leaders come through Rint and now into Red Bull Mobile Corner. And it's just like everyone is just really pushing the envelope. I'm waiting for someone to, unfortunately, drop a... not that I want it to happen, but there is always going to be that one moment. I mean, Lucas Prada has had that big moment of the race so far.
Yeah.
And,
I think at turn 1 it's especially bad because you have that huge sausage curb on the outside that's supposed to keep you from going wide.
yeah.
And from my friend Maxi, I've actually heard when you hit that, it's the worst feeling ever, simply because it's just such a complete hit. And one side of the car, you know, with the differential and stuff, obviously not quite sure what to do with that. The wheel just spins through and the traction control just kicks in and just everything about it feels awful.
Yeah, exactly. But like I was saying, coming out of that final corner, you put a left rear wheel on that grass on the outside of the curbing that your left rear tyre is about to go on. If that hits it, that could spin the car heavily into the barriers on the start-finish straight. And what's more, if you have to drive that thing round a full 4.318 kilometres, you are going to have a car that is not going to be your best friend. And even in sim racing, there is always that adage of mechanical sympathy. You've got to make sure that you're in full control. Driver and machine is one. And now we see that Sami-Matti Trojan, again, is still keeping that distance. Now, the thing that this says to me is that probably Sami Matti and Marino have been told, right, go out there, race, but bring it home. Then I think that the GT500 main race later on from 2 o'clock this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, will be a little bit different, because obviously we've got race 2 a little bit later on. That will see a different situation altogether. Who's going to put it on pole position? Who's going to be blocking out the front row? But again, we're now seeing that there are times when Moreno Sorica is able to pull away from Sami-Matti Trojan, but then there are places such as braking zones, corner apexes, is where Sami-Matti really regains that time. But then coming out of the corner whilst applying the traction, Moreno seems to have the better measure on him at the minute.
Yeah, as I said, you can take so many different lines here. We obviously see Moreno Sorica taking all of the space he can get off this track, you know, taking all of the runoff possible without hopefully getting those 1Xs for off track. And Sami-Matti Trojan is just trying to stay a little bit tighter, trying to run a little bit shorter distance, and it's always this sweet spot that you have to find in these fast corners here. Like, for example, here, it's also completely insane, Red Bull Mobile, because you just drop down, and before you have even really realize, before your body really adjusts to that dropping feeling, you know, like bungee jumping pretty much, you're dropping down and then instantly you just get compressed back up, simply because the corner just has such a drastic elevation change.
Yeah, 5 laps to go here in the opening qualification race of the 2023 ADAC SimRacing Expo Digital GT500. So we're live at the virtual recreation of the Red Bull Ring, but we're live here and direct from the Dortmund Messe. A big thank you to everyone watching on the YouTube and Twitch streams all the way through the past couple of days. For those that have been unable to make it here to the Ruhrgebiet here in Western Germany, Sami-Matti Trojan again starting to close up on Moreno Sorica for the race lead. And again, you can see once more like the little sort of dust clouds that are coming from the right hand side of Sami-Matti Trojan's car shows that he is not, you know, you put a fin behind a race wheel of any kind, they will not back down for anybody.
I mean, that's the thing. You use all of the track that you have and maybe a little bit more. Always, you know, maybe like a little bit, a smidge. But yeah, we already know, like, if you just take a little bit too much, that's also just knowing your car, having done a lot of practice. We know how quickly that can go wrong. Like, the first image that comes to my mind is Suzuka with Daniel Kvyat before going to the, after Degners underneath the bridge and, you know, then touching the sides of the grass before the hairpin, and yeah, very quickly that Red Bull was a scrap bull.
Yeah. Yeah, I still remember when Heikki Kovalainen decided to mount the barriers at the end, the outside of Degner 2. No, it was between Degner 1 and Degner 2, and he, at that point, was teammates to Lewis Hamilton. And that was quite funny seeing a very, very bright and shiny chrome McLaren with red accents and the Vodafone livery, and a Finn with the back axle on the tyre barriers. But again, like this is quite good where we see, you know, this is just giving us a little bit of a taster, because we're getting Moreno that time, a lot of dust kicked up by the Williams Esports Razor car. You know, you have to look on merit. You know, there's been a lot of successes for Williams Esports. I mean, you look at what happened last year. We had Louis Naza and also Daniel Pastor, who, funnily enough, Urano Esports, who are still well known in iRacing circles, they won ahead of Marla Racing Team. Marla Racing Team was actually being represented by Williams Esports, and Danny Lafuente, aka Lightning Lafuente, and that's the first time I've been able to say that in this broadcast. Well, Danny will be out in race 2. Danny was actually one of the drivers, if I remember correctly, for the Marla Racing Team. You know, you've had, with like Coanda, you've had the big names in. You've had Joshua Rogers, you've had Mitchell de Jong, and they have been close. But then Urano Esports had, as I said, Louis Naza and Daniel Pastor, and then Louis and Daniel team up as Williams Esports Chill Blast, and you know, basically get in the top 3. But we are on what is going to be now. We've got this and a couple more laps to go before we get to the checkered flag. It's been quite interesting that a lot of the field have been, okay, people might say, yep, spread out. We are, I thought I was having double vision right there.
The Matrix is breaking.
Don't start that talk right there. But I mean, it's been pretty good that you know, they'll probably have a similar baseline setup, won't they, these two Ferraris? But there'll also be the little tweaks that will favour Moreno and Alessandro, and then you've got Danny and Sammy Matti. So they'll have their own sort of approach. You know, sometimes you can be a little bit more aggressive on the spring rebound, you know, the damper rate.
Yep.
Also taking into consideration a lot of what you can do on ACC, where you've got things such as who are you waving to there?
Colleague.
Ah, well, there we go.
One of the guys who actually got me into like bigger sim racing circles and stuff. So yeah.
Well, yeah, it's always good. It's always good.
Met him ages ago in karting, and then actually found him again through sim racing. So yeah, this hobby is one of the best in the world. I don't care what anyone says.
It's like that circle of life thing.
Yeah, exactly. Nice callback to yesterday.
But we are on our penultimate lap of the opening qualifying race for the ADAC Digital GT500 at the Red Bull Ring. Morena Sarica still leading Sami Matti Trogan, Vikas Muller in third, and for Door Esports, Michael Krechel. The interesting thing is, when you've got the two drivers that were racing together last year in different camps, that's actually quite good when you look at it. Reiter Engineering Esports, who are currently sitting in 9th place, they're actually 24th last year. Absolute Motorsport, Andrea Dalle Valle, who was actually one of the drivers that competed in it. Dalle Valle was actually 19th in the 88 Porsche at Monza last year. So now Moreno Sarica crosses the line. Very, very
Do you want to make it even more awkward in this situation here?
Yeah.
So for Falken and for Dörr, we have Müller and Rechel.
Yeah.
Teammates last year, as you said. And they're also sitting right next to each other. Right
yeah,
over
there. We haven't just got team boxes over by the left-hand side of the main start.
They're spread everywhere.
They are actually competing in booths that have been set up. We are now on the final lap. And coming across the line is one of the Pro Sport Porsches. That'll be the number 7. We'll have, I think if I remember, that was Victor Brill behind the wheel of that car. but the leaders now making their way down the descent for what will be the final time. It's a pretty strong start for both Williams Esports drivers, or teams thereof, with Razor leading Chill Blast. Falcon Sim Racing will pick up 48 points after this opening qualifying race. And then we'll have our second race of the day. The second race will take place, we'll be getting things underway with that at about 12:30 this afternoon, before we then have a little bit of a breather before the final side of things, whereby it'll be 2:30 this afternoon as the checkered flag will be coming out this time. And it's Williams Esports Razor with one of the defending champions, Moreno Sarica, that comes across the line, winning the opening qualifying race at the Red Bull Ring and has also set the fastest lap of the race. Williams Esports Chill Blast takes second, Falcon Sim Racing in third, Door Esports, Thomas Enger Sim Racing, and Pro Sport Sim Racing Blue rounding out sixth. Grid and Go Esports, Stefan Morsch Stiftung rounds out seventh. Get Closer Racing eighth. Here comes Reiter Engineering Purple in the Mercedes. 77, they come across the line, and that is the conclusion of the opening qualifying race. Nico, okay, yes, we saw a little bit of ebbing and flowing between Moreno Sarica and Sami Matti Trogan, but all in all, a very, very uneventful, calm start to the ADAC Digital GT500, wouldn't you agree?
I think everyone's also just holding themselves back a tiny little bit, at least. You know, everyone knows this is for the qualifying, for the actual race, so maybe they're also saving a bit of strength and obviously just trying to be careful. They don't want to get a penalty for either this or for the main race in the end. And obviously also, it's better and easier to race with each other when you're on better terms. So if you're instantly going into turn one, crash into one of the other guys, you're not going to get along too well for the rest of the time. So
yeah. So there are your results. The Williams Esports Razor car, piloted by Moreno Sarica, winning by 7.5 tenths of a second. Out of Sami Matti Trogan from Williams Esports Chill Blast, Lucas Müller for Falcon Sim Racing rounds out the top three. Michael Reichel for Door Esports is in fourth, head of Thomas Enger Sim Racing's Lukas Prada, Philip Dirsus for Pro Sport Sim Racing Blue, Sven Haase for Grid and Go Esports, Stefan Morsch Stiftung rounds out the next position. Get Closer Racing, Sven Hettich, Maximilian Podol for Reiter Engineering, and Victor Brill, who was the only one that had a bit of a drama in this race, rounded out the finishing order. But that concludes the first of two qualifying races for the ADAC Digital GT500, as we are in the Styrian countryside, around 2 hours drive outside of the capital city of Vienna. And well, I think really that's it from us at the moment. Stay tuned for our upcoming panel at around 11:25 this morning, where we'll be talking about how sim racing is doing today and what's beyond. And until then, thanks for watching. We'll see you in a bit.